Facebook. All right. Zuckerberg. So Facebook has been under attack recently. Obviously, we've all seen Mark Zuckerberg in Congress and all the memes that popped up because of it, and they're funny, but also there's a very big problem. So all right, everyone, welcome to our first session. So we're going to be having a discussion about Kickstarter, about makers, about the connection between making and Kickstarter. I'm Yossi Levine. I'm the co-founder of Nisnas Industries, along with Max, who's behind the camera, who may or may not say hi. There you go. And Omer Matityahu, serial entrepreneur. Is that right?
Yeah, founder of Irrational Ventures.
Irrational Ventures. So we just to give a background to it, we've known Omer for going on 2 years now,
yeah.
Right? And we worked together on a project that Omer spearheaded, which was how would you describe the calendar?
It's called the Perfect Notebook, and it's kind of a productivity tool for people who are sick of apps and want to go old school with hardware and hard copies, and it works really well.
Cool. And just so that everyone understands, it was a very, very successful Kickstarter project that made over $200,000. And do you remember exactly how much?
220.
220. Yeah. So again, a fairly decent-sized Kickstarter project, and it garnered a lot of attention, and was also part of the idea behind it is that Professor Dan Ariely created much of the theory behind it, and which allowed people to make themselves more organized in a very organic way. So Omer has quite a bit of experience in Kickstarter projects, and we have, oh Lord, how many projects have we done so far, Max? Would you say 12 projects? 12 projects, and it's actually important to say, because I mean we've had a couple of pretty grand failures as well. 3 or 4, would you say? Three failures? Okay. So we are about 15 Kickstarter projects deep, and there's a whole lot of knowledge behind it, a real database of understanding going 5 or 6 or 7 years back that we really want to share with you. So let's just talk about how that's going to happen, and sure. We'll cover a couple of topics. And I think before we do start, I think one thing that is important to talk about is where we're sitting right now. Probably should have said this in the beginning, but why don't we go ahead and do this now? We're sitting in an amazing space called the Whiskey Bar and Museum in Tel Aviv. It's actually got the largest selection of whiskeys in the Middle East, maybe perhaps in Europe. Really, really amazing space in a historic underground lair type place. And they have been kind enough to host us. All right, so again, thank you to the Whiskey Bar and Museum in Tel Aviv. Come and visit. It's amazing. Okay, so I think I want to go through the rules of how we're going to do this. So we'll cover topic by topic, and as we go through, we'll have a little drink. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
It may make things more or less interesting as we go.
Yeah.
So?
Cheers.
Cheers. Chaim. Cool. And if anyone was wondering, these are the tumblers that we make. This isn't...
Smooth.
It is pretty decent. So this isn't product placement, but I guess it could be. So we do make these. All right. Sorry for checking out my phone, but this is the best way to keep track of our topics. So let's go for it. So we're going to be covering I guess what might be slightly taboo for Kickstarter makers. It's a topic that every Kickstarter maker, when he starts working on his Kickstarter project, sometimes he leaves this as the last topic to cover because you get excited about your project. You want it to be the most amazing thing out there. You'll do anything to get it done. But today we're going to be covering the bottom line. In other words, you start with your project. Is it all going to create revenue? Are you going to be able to make this project make any money through Kickstarter? And if anyone's done a Kickstarter project before, you will know that this is not obvious in any way.
Definitely.
So from our experience, we've done quite a bit in order to analyze our project from the get-go, so that we reach a point where we reach the end of it, and we actually turn a profit. I think the statistics are that about half or 60% of all Kickstarter projects, once they are successful, they do not make any profit, and there are several reasons for that. Omer, do you want to talk about your experience with that a little bit? Like when you started planning both your projects, so the game and the most recent notebook.
Yeah. So in principle, I think, at least, again, I'm not doing that full time, so it's a bit different. Right. It's even harder for me because I have to sustain profits for longer. In principle, I would look at it in the following way. Kickstarter is a great platform to get exposure, to get one large initial lump sum to finance the product creation, production, and to finance also your inventory for the coming period. After that, it's e-commerce. Once you have the products and you need to push them in the different ways, either Amazon, Shopify, your own website, different other platforms. However, as you said, it's not always working for many reasons, and I think that when planning, it's really important to make sure that, at least from my perspective, the Kickstarter itself is profitable. Now, there are so many risks and issues that can happen along the way, and the key to mitigate those risks is very good planning, and especially not to forget logistics, which is the killer of many Kickstarter campaigns, because people are not aware of the costs, especially considering the size and weight and the
so you mean specifically when it comes to shipping? When you say logistics, you mean shipping?
Yeah. People, because small businesses like ours tend to get very high shipping rates, right. Because we are working with fulfillment companies and they are storing it and handling it for us. So it's expensive. Consumers do not understand that, and sometimes it's very difficult, to charge even what you're paying.
Right.
So a lot of campaign creators are subsidizing these costs, but that's at the end what's killing the project, because you're losing on every item, and sometimes you're not aware of it until the end, when you actually look at the numbers and see that you're lost.
So actually, I wasn't planning on getting into shipping, but that's an interesting point to start with. Could you talk specifically in your campaign how you did that? And since we helped a little bit with your recent campaign, maybe I can add a little bit to that.
All right. So in principle, it's very difficult to find one fulfillment center or a partner that can cover the entire world. So I used to use three, one in the US, one in the UK, and one in China, to cover the major continents, and then I would route the items depending on the orders from the location where it's cheaper to ship from.
Yeah.
And there's another reason, and that's being EU friendly. Especially in my first campaign, which was a game, a lot of game customer or game consumers are very concerned about projects being EU friendly, meaning they sometimes do not back projects that ship from outside of the EU. Could
you explain what EU friendly means?
Yeah, so the EU has, most EU countries have very significant customs on items that are shipped from outside of the EU. It means that if someone is backing a Kickstarter project and it's a big or a heavy board game, and I'm shipping from the US, not only they pay the cost of the product and shipping, they will also pay a significant fee in customs.
The end customer would
the
pay
end customer will pay that. There's no way for me to pay that for them. So plus it's a very significant amount. So a lot of, it's especially common in the game creator business because of the size and the weight.
So let's just get specific. How much did the game cost, and how much did EU customers have to pay in customs?
So sometimes, depending on the country. By the way, it's sometimes happening also in countries like Brazil, South America, and so on and so forth.
Right.
But it is possible for someone to pay the same amount as they pay for the game for customs and handling and different commissions.
So basically, they would pay double.
They may pay double, yeah.
So they would obviously get pissed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for this reason, a lot of Kickstarter creators, even having the EU-friendly logo on the campaign page or even on the cover photo, because it's so important.
Yeah.
And it means that you have to ship from within the EU to EU backers. This is why I have, again, that was before Brexit. I don't know what happened before, but my base is in the UK.
Yeah.
And
so who did you use in the UK?
I'm using Games Quest.
Games Quest.
Games Quest. They're shipping out of the UK.
So they're a fulfillment shipping expert.
Yeah. And basically, when I shipped from the factory, which is in China, to them, I paid customs once.
Yeah, going from China into the UK.
Yeah, and the difference is when I'm doing the import to the UK, I'm paying at cost.
Right.
When my customers are paying customs, they're paying at retail.
Right, of course.
So obviously they pay more, so it makes a lot of sense for me, first of all, to rid them out of the obligation to pay, and definitely since the difference is I'm paying much less because of the bulk and because I'm paying per cost, production cost, and they have to pay the fees on retail price.
Okay.
So that's one consideration.
So you had a UK-based fulfillment center. You had one in China and you had one in the US.
Yes.
Who did you use in the US?
In US, I'm using Click Here.
Okay. And were they good? Were they a good?
Yeah, very good.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking. So we want as much as possible to be able to share good experiences with our partners. So by all means, feel free.
Yeah. So I'm working with I actually used to work with another company, but they closed. They were. It was for my game campaign, and they specialize in games.
Right.
And then I moved to Click Here, and they're great. And
and they're still around. If people are looking for them, would you?
Yeah, I would be happy to recommend and refer them.
Cool.
And they have very good service and also good prices, even to remote countries, which is rare. Comparing them to others in the US, I think they're very good, both in terms of level of service and pricing.
And in China, who did you use?
Flowship.
Okay, so we've encountered them through our various projects, through 15 projects that we've done. We've never worked with them, and we've heard various opinions. Some people have had good experiences, some people have had more challenging ones. What was yours?
Generally, my experience was good, but I didn't have a lot of volume there because most of my customers were in the US and the EU.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's good that we discussed shipping, but I want to see if we can go back to our original question, which was it's assuming that you guys want to start your own project and you want to make sure that you actually make a profit in Kickstarter, and knowing that the odds are against you as far as turning a profit in your Kickstarter project. So how do you do it? So why don't we backtrack a little bit and talk about the process within the project itself?
Yeah.
So the main engine to keep a project going, at least up until now, has been Facebook and Facebook marketing. At least a very serious part of it has been. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, what your experience was in it, and then we can see. Our experience is very different because you've had two very, very big projects, and we've had 15 various size projects over almost 8 years now. Yeah. So we are able to gauge the effectiveness of the process over a long period.
A lot of change in Facebook this period as well.
So it would be interesting to go into that. So what has been your experience with specifically email marketing for the project?
Email and Facebook.
I'm sorry, I mean Facebook, not email.
So Facebook, I really believe in this method. I think for me it worked very well. I was very aggressive, and I think we'll elaborate on that as we go on, because I wanted to get traffic, not only to get sales, but to get traffic, and getting a lot of traffic and getting a lot of pledges is doing good for the project. It's getting exposure, it's giving the project exposure from other directions, either from a Kickstarter rating, or somebody starts writing on you, so you get free PR, and so on and so forth. So even though, when you work with the right partner, I worked with Jello, they did a great job, and they brought a lot of traffic, and there was good conversion. And I took it even...
Why don't we just stop and just so that everyone understands the terms. One is conversion, so what conversion means, and also what it means that you wanted to get more exposure. So basically it means exposure over profit. So why don't you explain the calculation on that?
Yes. So in principle, again, I don't know exactly the algorithm, but in principle what I've seen, that when a lot of people are entering Kickstarter from an ad or from Google, it doesn't matter, and they access your campaign, your campaign gets more views, you get higher ranking with different Kickstarter pages, either popular or whatever. This gives you a kind of organic exposure from Kickstarter itself, even though it was caused by external factors. So that's an added value, meaning that you do not only evaluate the effectiveness of Kickstarter and of Facebook and Google or email campaign only by the mere conversion of Facebook. Conversion means that someone saw my ad, clicked it, and actually bought the product right there and then.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you do Facebook ads in a good way, good targeting, you work with professionals, you can expect very good conversion rates.
What would you say is a good conversion rate?
For me, even one...
And then we'll explain a little bit what conversion is.
First of all, because it's Kickstarter and there's kind of a fear of missing out atmosphere going on, conversion is much, much better than anything else out there. Someone sees an ad and go to a website, conversion for the same product would be much less. So
because it's time sensitive. In other words, this project will end in so and so days.
I may see. I'll decide later. And Kickstarter, it's fear of missing out and wanting to be part of the group of backers who are pushing an exciting new product and so on and so forth. There are a lot of reasons why people, the conversion rates within Kickstarter are better than standard or general e-commerce. So that's one factor, conversion.
But since we're speaking to a crowd of makers, let's be specific about what is a decent conversion rate in your opinion, and then we can talk about what you did in the project, because it's a very unique situation that you were in. So if we can talk about the tactics that you used, and then we can talk about that.
First of all, it depends if you're working with the company that's doing the Facebook campaign for you. Then I would expect 1 to 4 conversion rate, which is high for e-commerce, but that's more or less break even because you have to pay the agency. If you're doing the campaign yourself, I think that 1, 2, 1, 3 is acceptable.
So I'll just explain. So conversion 1 to 4 means that you will get $4 for every dollar that you spend, and that's tremendous if that's doable. So what Omer is saying is that if you do it on your own, you can expect to do half, but that's only if you're able to get production costs at where you want them to be.
Exactly. There are also definitely other considerations. Now, so I want to elaborate a little bit about just
Yeah, because
getting
you had a
traffic.
very interesting case.
Yeah. So what I did is because my product was a notebook, and the notebook had the content, and I could actually give the content, which had tremendous value on its own, to backers. So one of my rewards was a PDF, and it was a $1 reward, and the backer could actually get the entire notebook on a PDF.
Right.
Obviously, if they actually got the product, the hard copy, it has additional values. It's a customizable disk-bound system. It's beautiful. It's a very special size, and there's reasons for that, and so on and so forth. A lot of advantages. But if you don't want to commit, or if you want to try it first, you can get the reward.
You would get a PDF file
of the notebook.
Of the notebook.
Yeah, with the task manager and the different dashboards and reflection pages, all the tools. All
you would get,
tools.
in other words, Dan Ariely was like the brain behind it, and you would get his content.
Exactly.
His proprietary content, you would get it for $1.
$1, you can print it and, as much as you want. You can put it in a folder, whatever. You can do whatever you want.
And what was the effect? So just to clarify, you and we helped a little bit with this project, so we saw this firsthand, created a reward, a $1 reward, for which you would get an electronic copy as a PDF instead of the notebook. And what was the result?
So the result was that overall I had like 6,700 backers. About half of them took that reward.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it actually created a twofold effect. First of all, it got me ranked really high in the popular page. I was actually #1 for 4 or 5 days in a row.
So just to clarify, Kickstarter has several categories in which you can rank high. One is popular category. Another one is, they have them within different categories. So they have them within design, they have them within fashion, and all of these different categories. So what this created was a very high ranking, kind of like a Google ranking, that put Omeo #1, I think, for
#1 for 4 or 5 days,
4 or 5
in
days.
a row,
Right.
which created kind of organic pledges from people who enter Kickstarter, and that's the first project they saw.
Right.
Just because of the ones, because there was so much traffic, people just kept buying so Facebook was pushing a lot of people in. A lot of them got the $1 reward.
Right.
That pushed me up, and then I got real rewards.
And then people, because you were so high up, people bought the notebook because they already saw
Exposure
it.
is everything. Exposure is everything.
Exposure is everything.
So that's point one. Point two is that once I had these backers who only took the PDF, I could try to convert them later, after the campaign, within a year.
I remember that.
So some of them actually converted, changed the pledge to any of the other pledges, and actually got the notebook.
They got the PDF file, and then you were able to contact them, and they converted from getting the PDF file to getting the notebook. So that's an easy win. Right? That's you basically get it's a conversion of That's an insane conversion.
So some of them did that. Some of them kept the PDF, and maybe some of them never even used it. I don't know, but definitely there's an upsell potential when you are using this kind of reward.
Right.
And regardless of all that, I'm a great believer of the $1 reward tier, because I think that now, you can just put a pledge without any reward, just put $1.
You can still do $1.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still do it.
Yeah, but before, a few years ago, there wasn't an option. You had to actually create a $1 tier campaign.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the last, I think it's 6 months, or in the last year, Kickstarter added the possibility just to add any amount without a reward.
I thought they always had that, but I could be wrong.
Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, a lot of people just want to follow.
Yeah.
Not everybody even know the favorite or the click the heart so they get the 48-hour notification. They want to follow. They want to be part of the community. They want to get the updates. They want to get the updates after the campaign.
Right.
They want to buy the product after.
Right.
So allowing people the $1 reward tier, I think it's something that builds a better community and gives people the ability to to work with you.
So basically what your dollar did for a lot of people, I mean, it obviously had several effects, but one interesting effect that it had was to give people the feeling that they reserved the product.
Yeah.
In other words, they put $1 in, and then they're like, I can get this later because I'm already part of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, I also compensated these people because I had special promotions after the campaign only for backers. They were backers. Okay, so there was benefit for them as well.
Very cool. All right. So, I mean, there's a living place, so people walk in and out. That's perfectly fine. Come and goes. No worries. All right, so we talked a little bit about the role that Facebook played in this, and what I want to try to do now is fill in the blanks, because Omer worked on this project. This was a year and a half ago, I think it was, or a year ago. And what we're able to do, because Nisnas Industries has been doing this for many years, is talk about the arc that Facebook and other players like Jellup that you mentioned. Actually, a step back. Jellup is, they do Facebook marketing, and they're actually also very good friends of ours. I think it's jellup.com, is that right, Max? Yeah? Very, very good people, do amazingly effective work. This is our opportunity to be able to let people know when people do good work, and they definitely do. But we also want to be able to give the inside track on everything. Max, do you remember what the percentage is for how much Jellup take? Do you remember, by chance, how much they take?
Around 20%.
22%, I think?
2.5?
Something like that.
I think a bit less. I think a bit less. But there's also the amount you actually pay Facebook.
That you pay Facebook and so on. So it's important to point out, they're not the cheapest, but they do very, very good work.
Yeah.
So there are several actors who do Facebook marketing. This is a good opportunity to talk about a few of them that we've worked with in the past. One of them that we worked with recently is Aventis Partners. They also do Facebook marketing. In our experience, Jellup does better than them in a lot of ways, and that has to do with the kind of database that you have. So they have quite an extensive database. I think they have the biggest database of all the other Facebook marketers out there. So why don't we just step back and talk about the ecosystem of Facebook marketers. So we talked about Jellup. We talked about Aventis Partners. I think they're based in Spain. Is that right, Max? Yeah, in Spain. We just recently worked with another company called Bragg, B-R-A-A-G, and they do decently. They have a new system that we don't actually know all that well, but they use some decent AI, and they did okay by us. And then there's the famous / infamous Funded Today. So Funded Today, I think, are the first Facebook marketing company. I think they started right when Kickstarter did. And they're very, very big, and they do a lot of work. And we've worked with them once. And our best experience has been, up until now, with Jellup. And we had quite a few challenges with Funded Today. I think that's fair to say, although we know quite a few people who have done well with them. So the two big players are Funded Today and Jellup, and from all of those, I think we can fairly easily say that the Jellup has been the best.
I worked with Jellup twice, and I was very happy with the results.
Yeah, but so those are the main players. I think there are always new players coming in. But at this point, we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Facebook. So why don't we drink before we get into Facebook? Sure. How about that? Facebook. All right. Zuckerberg. So Facebook has been under attack recently. Obviously, we've all seen Mark Zuckerberg in Congress and all the memes that popped up because of it, and they're funny, but also there's a very big problem. What we've noticed since your campaign, which was a year and a half ago, is that conversions have been steadily dropping for Facebook marketing. So if we were in the past able to talk about a conversion of 1 to 4, in our most recent campaign, we were looking at the 1-to-2 and 1-to-1. In other words, just to clarify, if you have 1-to-1, you're losing money because you're giving away your product at the cost that you're making it, and then losing it on marketing and on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a steady, and we've seen this over the past 5 projects, that our ability to use folks like Jalop has gone way down over the past 2 years. 2 years, does that make sense? You think before that, Max, or?
Yeah, I think we have to give a number, which is what is the overall contribution of the Facebook campaign to your overall campaign from your experience. In my case, it was about 30%.
30%?
Yeah.
Wow.
So 30% of revenue came from Jalop/Facebook.
I'm saying wow because that's low, not wow because that's high.
Yeah, but
30%.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And the rest was organic through the system.
Yeah, either my email subscribers or Kickstarter organic. But again, because of what I mentioned before, that I was able to push the organic from within Kickstarter, so maybe you can allocate some of that benefit to them. But in principle, the rest was either organic or email subscribers.
So I think that's really interesting. Okay, so for us, it's always been much higher than that. So we have a fairly robust email database, and which we always use. But for us, I think we've always been at 50% for Jalop or Jalop-like actors, which means that if that goes down, that's significant, much more significant than the 30%. That's interesting. All right. So the question is, what do you do? What do you do when those conversions go down? And then it becomes an interesting discussion of, do you sacrifice your profit for backers, knowing that later you're going to have a big project, like a successful product?
Yeah.
Like how do you mitigate the risk? So you were at this point exactly. I mean, I remember when we were there a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So maybe you could speak to
you know,
this.
the question, first of all, you need to ask yourself, who are you? Meaning, are you someone who relies on the profitability of the actual campaign, or you're building a business and you know how to sell the products afterwards? If you don't have any infrastructure, any experience, any capabilities to do the actual e-commerce post-campaign, then you must be profitable. So that's a different story. If what you need is a kickstart for your business on e-commerce, then you can break even or even slightly lose. You do have additional inventory because you funded some of the inventory. You got larger quantity, you got better prices. So it did give you a kickstart both from exposure, experience, shaping the product to what the market wants, and so on and so forth. So that's a good thing. So the answer is, who are you? If you know how to do e-commerce, and you think you can be successful with that, you don't have to be profitable. You just need that kickstart. But if you're actually most of your revenue, like 90% of your revenue will come from Kickstarter, then you have to find a solution to Kickstarter profitability. Either through pricing or other means of marketing.
So let's talk about your case specifically. So I remember we were about 2 weeks into the campaign, and it was a question of whether or not you push ads hard by spending more, or you level off, and you decided to spend more at the risk of essentially losing money on the campaign. And you decided to do it. And what were you thinking when you did that?
So going back to the previous point, that created a lot of traffic for me, and eventually created also pledges.
And you had Projects We Love badge on your project. No. You did not?
In my first project, yes. In the second, no.
That's interesting.
And by the way, it's a good point, because newsletters not run by yourself on your database are very powerful, as you know.
They're huge.
When Kickstarter puts you in their Project We Love, when Kickstarter is sending a newsletter, the same in Indiegogo.
I didn't know that. I thought it was the other way around. I thought you were Projects We Love from, or maybe I'm remembering wrong. I'm remembering wrong.
I wasn't.
So that's a very powerful project without getting Kickstarter to give you a boost.
Yeah.
Maybe we should explain what that is, because I don't think everyone knows. Kickstarter, when someone on staff at Kickstarter takes a liking to your project, they'll give it a little badge. In the past, it was called something else. I thought it's Projects We Love, I think.
Yeah.
Projects We Love. So you get a little heart next to your campaign, and you have the off chance of being featured on their newsletter. Newsletters, and this is a very important point, are more effective than anything. They are the most effective tool, and if you get on the Kickstarter newsletter, then good for you, because that is very, very effective at getting the word out and at creating more pledges. And you didn't have that.
No, I didn't. And again, I think I did have that in my first campaign. It was worse. I would say 5% of the campaign came from the newsletter. That's my KPI.
So it's quite a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can manage to do that, and now how to do that? If you have a special, unique, original product with a lot of buzz, probably you'll get that.
Yeah, in our experience, there's no rule for it. So we've become friendly with some people at Kickstarter, and it's super, super great staff, super helpful, but there is no guarantee to be able to get into their newsletter, get a Projects We Love, and Kickstarter is always changing. So they're always looking for something that is more community-minded, more cutting-edge design, things that are not only things that people haven't seen before, but also things that have an added value to community. I don't know if everyone knows this, but Kickstarter is a B Corp. So they're part of a growing movement to do good by their community as well as selling.
Yeah. And
so
the good news that sometimes if a project is an underdog, they get chosen to help them. If they comply with everything you mentioned, and also they're not doing very well, they are sometimes getting that boost.
This is a good opportunity to talk about a case that we had like this, because it was a lifesaver. So we at Nisnas Industries, this is like our bread and butter. Like these tumblers that we make, they're our bread and butter. But we also do social projects. So we did one project that was completely local, all about community mobilization, and we created a stencil pack for our community in Wadi Salib, in our local town of Haifa. And it was super, super interesting. It was a way for people to be able to make their own like tile patterns in an ancient neighborhood called Wadi Salib, and they could make it everywhere. And it was an amazing project that we really, really loved, and it tanked. It was terrible. It just tanked. Like we did filming, we did everything, and it was terrible. But it got the label Projects We Love from Kickstarter, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, I think we made $3,000 on the project before they came in, and then we got featured on their newsletter, and we went from $3,000 to $35,000, which is how the project ended. So I don't know, what is that in percentage? How many thousands
500.
of percent? So that entire project was just because of the Kickstarter newsletter. But like, here's a word of advice: do not expect miracles. Like that happened to us once. Yeah. 1 out of 15 projects. So it really doesn't happen very often. But going back to the point about Facebook changing, Facebook. I guess this is part of a longer conversation, which we probably won't have time for. I don't know if it's people being more suspicious of Facebook or Facebook ads, or people in between the ages that Kickstarter relies on, which is, I guess, 22 to 39. I think there are statistics about, specifically in that age range, people leaving Facebook for all of these reasons.
Maybe.
I don't know what that is.
So the question is what's replacing it. I think, I've seen that there are some creators that only focus on one media for the campaign, so they only take Facebook or something else. Yeah. Maybe it's time to, spread your budget on different...
on other things.
Other things, Google, remarketing. I'm now getting to a completely different side and getting the ad there.
Have you had an experience with Google Ads in Kickstarter?
Not in Kickstarter, but I am doing that as e-commerce for now, and it's working now the same as Facebook. So
Yeah.
I think, many of the companies are really putting a lot of emphasis. You know, the marketing agencies are putting much more emphasis on Facebook and much less on Google. Maybe Google would be something to try and focus on next, and definitely where the young people are going, Instagram and.
We've also had
tools.
conversations with another marketeer that we didn't mention, Crowdreach. Crowdreach are based in the UK, I think. Will is in the UK, right? And they did tremendous work for us, and because of this entire conversation, they've been thinking about transitioning to do much more work on Indiegogo as opposed to Kickstarter, which we have had zero. I mean, just to be transparent, we've never done an Indiegogo campaign. It might be an interesting conversation to have with someone later on.
Yeah, Indiegogo, I've seen there are a lot of creators that actually take their Kickstarter project after it's finished and move that to Indiegogo.
I mean, I don't mean transferring a Kickstarter
but
project
actually starting there.
Yeah. Just starting it there. That might be an interesting way to go. But the point is that I think we're at a junction. We're at a turning point for Kickstarter and Facebook as far as Kickstarter using Facebook as a marketing platform. And I'm not sure how to be as clear as possible about this. Something that used to work really, really well in the past with like a 1-to-4 conversion is no longer there. So if we were to give any advice to someone who's starting out, there's no way of relying on any conversions that used to be set 2 years ago and then saying those will work today because they don't anymore.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say that your project, if you were to take up the same project from 2 years ago and run it today, do you think that it would hold the same conversions?
Maybe a little less. But I do think that these situations actually make you look for other solutions, and I think one of them is something that sometimes people are not aware of or think it's too much work, but that's actually building your community long before the campaign begins. And definitely if you have a brand name you can use, then you can actually get a very, very good two first days with the community you've built and a brand name that can give you their followers. And if you're able to do that, maybe it will compensate for the fact that Facebook is doing less for us.
Yeah, understood. I totally agree. I think that building your community before you start, if you can, then that's huge.
Yeah.
But there's also conversion going into that as well. In other words, how much you spend in order to be able to create that community. Okay, how are we doing on time, Max? 45 minutes. So I think that we'll save for next time a discussion on how you build a database before you start a campaign, and it's that we have lots to go into as far as that. So I think for our first session, I think we got quite a bit. Omer, thank you. All right.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to the Whiskey Bar and Museum in Tel Aviv. You guys are amazing. By all means, if you're in town, come and visit. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers.
חיים. אפשר ללכת הביתה?